Welcome to another episode of the Integrated Human Podcast. Today is episode 9, and I'm here with a very, very special guest. I'm here with Jeremy Rodriguez, not just a mental health coach, but I like the way he puts it, mental wealth coach. And in this podcast today, we're going to be focusing on building wealth inside of the mind and just go through all the intricate details, what the mind is, how it works, and also me expressing my own flaws to Jeremy to see how he can course correct me in my personal life so that the viewers watching can have actionable steps for them to take in their life. So there was two things that I wanted to mention before we get started was how you pose yourself as one is a mental wealth expert. I like that. And then two is I seen in one of your posts with I believe it was your son, your 19-year-old son.
Yes, sir.
You said I'm a master at confronting myself. So, you need
I'm
no
a
introduction with
sensei.
those two phrases. So that being said, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm feeling great. There's nothing like getting to a point in life where you can see the work that you've put in on yourself, right? So when you think about life, life is a beautiful journey, right? And we all think that we're going to all of these destinations, but the reality is the only real destination that we're going to is the departure that we're all going to be leaving at some point. So when I think about life and this journey and all of the beautiful opportunities that I had to endure, so many challenges, bro, so many things that I had to overcome, it gives me this great sense of calm, this great sense of peace, and this great sense of joy of knowing that I didn't suffer in vain, right? I didn't suffer because I had no idea that there was another side to suffering. I wasn't taught how to really deal with the suffering and the trauma and all of those things that led me to having just a lot of negative emotions. So to be on this side, I think I can appreciate this side so much more because I know what it is to be on the other side for as long as I was.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And yeah, that's something. How I correlate that is, and I think many people would too, is like the gym, right? Is like in order for you to get stronger or get bigger, you got to go through some type of suffering or some pain. But this is the mental side of it, which is a realm I feel like, just speaking for me personally, is not as sharp as the physical side because we're just always just external anyways. We're
Correct.
not too much here. There's not a lot of focus there. So just learning how to exercise the mind, um, just like you have tools and tricks to work out and eat healthy and keep the body sharp is I think golden overall as an integrated human, right?
Right. So that right there, I'm glad you said that because that's exactly why I consider myself a mental wealth coach.
Mm,
So when you think about wealth, a lot of times we associate wealth with the external. What can I acquire? What can I buy? What am I worth? How much do I have? But what I realize is that if your emotional home is not a positive one, no matter what you're able to acquire externally, the emotional home will compromise the experience with the external because of your perception of how you're viewing your reality. So I'll give
mm,
you an example. If your emotional home is guilt, or your emotional home is shame, or your emotional home is fear, or the common one, which is the one that a lot of people come to me to really disrupt, is if your emotional home is desire and you're spending your life always desiring, that means that nothing is ever going to feel like it's enough. And if nothing ever feels like it's enough, that means that you're going to go through an entire lifetime consistently chasing something, not realizing that the only way to fill the internal void is by addressing the emotional home. So once I understood There was a point in my life where I had a lot. I was on a plane weekly. I was doing what everybody considered successful. However, there was still such an internal deficit that I wasn't able to extract the beauty in what I was living because I was constantly seeking the next thing. So while I was in DR, I was thinking about PR. While I was in PR, I was thinking about Vegas. While I was in Vegas, I was thinking about Florida. While I was in Florida, I was thinking about Rhode Island. While I was in Rhode Island, and it was just a non-stop desire. And it wasn't until I said, what's actually missing? And what was missing was me focusing on the thing that matters more than anything on this planet, and it was the emotion. So hear me out. Once I was able to construct an emotional home of joy and peace, now my perception of my reality was always geared around joy and peace. So what happens? Once your emotional home is of peace, is of joy, and I mentioned these emotions intentionally because we're talking about the frequency chart. When your emotional home is peace and joy, you're able to look at life with those lens. But this is my favorite part about everything, Elijah. Once my emotional home was correct, I was no longer emotionally dependent on reality changing for me to feel something. So once I was no longer emotionally dependent on reality changing for me to feel something, now everything that my reticular activating system was attracting was everything just to support the peace and the joy. So now I can be still and feel like I'm on a vacation. The same way I could be on a vacation and be still on that vacation. Because it was nothing external that was going to move me anymore. And once you get to the point, and I'm very passionate about this, because once you can get to the point where you're navigating your life with the correct emotional home and you're no longer a slave to reality, reality becomes a slave to you.
Repeat that again.
Once you could get to the point where you're no longer a slave to reality because you're living the reality with the correct emotion, now reality becomes a slave to you.
Wow.
Because how can reality prove to us something that we're unwilling to prove to ourselves? So because I have peace and I have joy and I'm no longer emotionally dependent on anything changing for that, now that frequency allows me to be in such a space that now reality has to persuade me to experience something. Because the only thing that anything on this planet can provide is a feeling. What happens if that feeling is my default? Now nothing can control me.
Right. I have a question on that. You said that your emotional home before where you're at now was of, negative emotions. But my question that I posed to you is when you said you had to figure out how you got to the destination you are now and having these embodying these emotions, like this is your default, is what exactly, how did you figure it out? What did you do? I think that's a key thing for me is that right. What did that look like? Was it journaling? What is it? How did you figure out that there was another side to this thing? And that if you stay consistent with these things or these things that you started to do started to help you unravel and unlock these next phases of your life.
Yes, that's a beautiful question. And I think that this question is going to help a lot of people. I didn't know that there was another side. That's step number one. I just didn't know, right? What I mean by step number one is the step number one was being aware that I didn't know. By me being aware that I didn't know, I had to figure out what I did know. And what I did know and what I did understand is that I didn't want to suffer anymore.
Mm.
I knew that. So I tried taking my life 15 times. Physically tried attempting to take my life 15 times. After the 15th attempt, I realized there has to be a reason why I'm still on this earth. But I still didn't have the tools to understand why. So the first step was admitting that I just didn't know. The second step was I had to identify what I no longer wanted. So what I knew is that I no longer wanted to be angry, bro. I knew that I no longer wanted to hurt somebody physically. What I knew is that I no longer wanted to be anxious. And what I also knew is that I no longer wanted to be depressed. You see, a lot of my suffering wasn't because of me. A lot of my suffering was because I was trying to solve problems that were out of my control to people that I loved with all of my heart. So once I was able to identify, you know what? No matter what happens, no matter what, I am divorcing anger. I am divorcing anxiety. And I am divorcing depression. So now, because I knew that I liked it to fight, I told myself, what if those three become my opponents? So I still didn't know about the positive emotions, but I knew that I'm competitive. And these emotions are no longer going to beat me down. So when they would come, I would mentally start to spar with them. Okay, you got me. You got me with a body shot. Beautiful. Once I was aware of that body shot, I'm like, nah. And I just started to redirect the energy, right? Like, because obviously you're not gonna physically fight with the emotion, but I started to redirect that energy. And what I realized, my biggest issue was that I kept on trying to run from the emotion rather than confront it. So during that
Right.
process, I was doing a lot of running, right? And even though I was redirecting, but when I redirected the energy, I was still running to suppress. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. I'm buying myself time, but now I'm creating a whole nother world of habits trying to suppress the reality that I no longer want.
Can you give us an example of what that looks like? What does that look like that someone can relate to? Um,
Yes.
yeah.
So the clear examples that I struggled with, and I was suppressing myself through these things, and I didn't realize that I was suppressing myself because of the pleasure that came with it, was pornography, hunting for females, and intercourse. So for me, it's like, I'm tired of pain. I knew that I didn't want to smoke, I didn't want to drink, and I didn't want to take pills because that's what I saw my family do, and I saw the amount of suffering that took place with those behaviors. So I'm like, you know what? Pornography gives me this instant gratification that instantly shifts my focus, instantly shifts my mood, and it gives me just this insane pleasure that allows me to buy me time. The pornography became so addicting that I now wanted to exercise that addiction in real life. So, in the midst of me trying to navigate my emotions and do the best that I could, I ended up now compromising other people's emotions because of my lack of awareness and my lack of skill set that I had on dealing with emotions. So that was the first phase. So at this point, I still wasn't sure, Elijah, what to do. All I knew was that I wanted to become better. And I was dealing with a storm mentally still. Mind you, my reality was intoxicated with drug abuse, domestic violence, and it was just unpredictable chaos. And I'm trying to survive and navigate through all of this, and I'm just like, I have to figure this out. And then one day it got to that point where I'm like, something has to give. That's when I went on YouTube and I looked up how to get rid of negative thoughts. So once I saw Tony Robbins talking about shifting your state, and working on yourself. He was talking positivity, and I'm like, bro, this guy's talking positive. It was French to me, but I was so curious because I'm like, at the end of the day, I've never heard this language.
Right.
So what happens, Elijah? The curiosity led me to becoming obsessed with personal development. And it wasn't until I went to see Tony Robbins in person in Texas that I sacrificed all of my funds to go buy a ticket to go over there, that I saw a room full of people that also wanted to change. And I'm like, oh, I'm not an alien. I'm not an alien. Like this is another world. Bro, and from there on, I became so passionate and so obsessed with constructing a human being that I no longer wanted to run away from. And all I was doing with the social media world is introducing them to things that I was never introduced to, because I'm like, man, where I come from, imagine if a lot of my friends and family and strangers get access to this information. And I was so infatuated with everything that I was learning because I started to see baby steps in just like in my behavior and in my emotions, that I would share things passionately. And what people didn't understand was, as I was sharing what I was learning, I was also healing in that process. Struggling with anxiety, I'm pouring to the social media world. Struggling with depression, I'm pouring to the social media world. Wanting to take my own life and getting those thoughts, I'm still pouring into the social media world. And I've literally documented the process of me getting to this point, which is why the people that mess with me, they really mess with me because they know what the other side has been.
Right. No, that's powerful. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that as well. I feel like the reality, or just someone sharing what they've been through or whatever it is that the obstacle they've got over can really help give a perspective that you can immediately put into your life, right? If
For
you
sure.
could do it, I could do it. That simple phrase, just like that, right? Um,
Absolutely.
so thank you for sharing that. Walk me. Well, before we go into that, I want you to dive into the mind, and let's get a little physiological. Let's get a little scientific with it, and so
Hmm.
we can understand what our brain is doing, what is getting stored, how does our nervous system work, how do we redirect, like have you heard of this documentary called Planet Mind Control? It just came out.
Not yet, no.
I gotta send this to you. It's this documentary called Planet Mind Control. It's by this dude, I forget his name, and he breaks down how the big companies are utilizing coffee, alcohol, and feminizing men to basically control your mind, but they're infiltrating your subconscious, which is accessing or deeply connected with your nervous system, which is making you do what they want you to do, but you feel like it's your organic thought process and action, right? Um, but I just say that all to say, could you break down that how this works? How does our brain work?
Right. So I'm gonna put it as simple as possible because I want to break it down in a way where people can extract and apply. So at the most basic form, we have the conscious mind and we have the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind was formed from that 0 to 7 years old. From 0 to 7, from the moment that you were born till you were about 6 to 7 years old, you still didn't have a consciousness. You were in a state called theta. So let's think about the 5 brain waves that we operate in, right? We have the alpha brain state, we have the beta brain state, we have the delta brain state, we got the theta brain state, and then we have the gamma. So let's break all of these down. When you're in delta, you're asleep. Pretty straightforward. When you're in theta, and this one is big, because we're in theta from 0 to 7 years old. When you're in theta, you're in a hypnosis state. When you're in a hypnosis state, the consciousness is no longer there, and now it's straight up subconscious. The theta state is when you're kind of awake and kind of asleep. It's that window where the conscious mind takes a break and then it becomes full subconscious. This one is going to be important because this is going to be what I want to teach people as far as the reprogramming of the subconscious mind.
Right.
So when we transition from delta to theta, kind of up, kind of awake, and then we transition from theta to delta, which is kind of awake, kind of asleep. Once we're waking up, we go from delta to theta to alpha. When you're in alpha, you're a little bit more alert, but you're still in a relaxed state. Beta is when we're here, and then gamma is when you're in fight or flight mode. So that's at the most basic level. Then we have the amygdala. The amygdala is responsible for how you operate in social settings and how you navigate through fear. So when you feel some type of threat, the amygdala becomes aware. Once the amygdala becomes responsive, now it has to decide, depending on that threat, whether or not we're going to go from beta to gamma, because we're going to go into that fight or flight mode. I'm going to pause really quick because this one is important. A lot of times, most people are operating in fight or flight. Their amygdala is active throughout their day because of how much stress their body feels. So when the body is not in homeostasis, that it's out of whack and it's literally trying to balance itself out, when all of that energy that's supposed to be in your diaphragm is in your limbs because you're either ready to fight or flight, it makes your organs work extremely hard, which is why a lot of people are having premature cardiac arrest, anxiety attacks, panic attacks. I mean, the list goes on and on. Because what your body is saying is, I am exhausted of being under this much stress. There's no pressure valve being released. And when there's no pressure valve being released, the compounding of suffering just leads to the organs working extremely hard. And when the organs have to keep working extremely hard, at some point, things start to check out little by little. So when people say something just automatically happened out of nowhere, there was a process that actually took place without people realizing it, right? That's the amygdala. And we're talking all of this on the most basic level. Then we have the neurons. The neurons are the connections that associates behaviors and emotions. So neurons that fire together, wire together. So imagine if we're in theta from 0 to 7 years old, and we're navigating our life as adults based on what happened from 0 to 7, all the wiring that took place during that time is what's showing up as an adult. So your 0 to 7 shapes your identity, it shapes your beliefs, it shapes your values. Those values shapes your thoughts. Those thoughts shape your emotions. Those emotions shape your behaviors. Your behaviors shape your habits, and then those habits shape your results.
The tongue twister.
Yes, bro. I'm trying to give a masterclass at the most basic level because how much I love you, how much I respect you, and how much I know that this is going to go to an audience that's going to really appreciate the simplicity of this. Because a lot of times, simplicity almost seems complicated because people think that things have to be extremely hard. What makes things extremely hard is our beliefs that things have to be extremely hard, right? So now we're going back to the brain. So when we have these neurons firing and wiring together with your thoughts, with your emotions, with your behaviors, we're just reinforcing the identity, reinforcing the beliefs, reinforcing the values, and then it goes all the way down to the results, because all of that is gonna, like I said, is gonna lead to the emotions, the thoughts, the emotions, the behaviors, the habits, and the results. So now, and what makes change so hard is that our brain doesn't like to be disrupted. Once our brain is fired and wired together for so long, that's what it's used to, that's what it can anticipate. So you hear the comfort zone being thrown out so much. The comfort zone is a real thing because what the brain doesn't like to do, it doesn't like a body shot, an unexpected body shot, like I mentioned earlier. The brain likes to be able to anticipate everything, and it wants to prove to itself that it's always right. This is why people rather struggle and suffer because of the familiarity than they do to take a leap of faith into the unknown. So now, why is this crazy? Bro, I'm upset. This right here, I'm obsessed with talking about this right here. You have no idea. Especially with somebody that truly understands. Because I often feel like when I'm speaking about this stuff, I have to dilute it in a way. And even though I'm simplifying it, but I have to dilute my desire to talk about this in a way that, people can understand, because this is real. We're talking about life.
Yeah.
Right? And it could be, and the understanding of things, even though they're simple, they can be very, very, very complex.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
So when we think about why is it that even though somebody knows that they shouldn't be in this state, they shouldn't be in this environment, they shouldn't be doing this behavior, why is it that it's so obvious from the outside, but it's not so obvious from the inside? It's because it's familiar. So guess what happens? Talking about the subconscious mind and how it shapes our behavior. So now when you attempt to take a leap of faith, what we don't realize is that our subconscious mind is studying our weakest points. Because what it's going to do is going to make sure that it puts itself in a position of comfort. And the way it's going to go into a position of comfort is by creating a trap for you to remind you of who you've been, so that you can end up relapsing in thoughts, relapsing in emotions, relapsing in behaviors, and that's how self-sabotage happens. And here's the thing that's crazy. Conscious, subconscious. Consciously, throughout our day, we're only consciously aware 5%. 95% is subconscious. So when you're attempting to make any type of radical change, or you're attempting to disrupt that 0 to 7 years old, your old self is going to try to exhaust its efforts to trap you, to try to remind you on who you've been. This is why I say, when you don't have a mentor, when you don't have a coach, how can you possibly consistently disrupt yourself when 95% of you is happening on autopilot?
Right.
You gotta have the conscious awareness to be able to look at yourself objectively while you're in the program, so that you can become knowledgeable on when you're in the trap to disrupt that pattern, so that you don't continue to relapse in all of these things and keep going backwards. That's why it's like the person that goes to the gym. And I'm speaking on as experience. My identity is still not yours. A person that fitness is the absolute utmost priority. So I start off strong and I do good and I feel myself. I take a couple of selfies. I'm feeling right. I'm like, let's go. We outside. And then what happens? Little by little, the craving of pizza, the craving of juice, the craving of chips. So even me that I teach this stuff, that I'm consciously aware of this stuff, for me, I understand the severity on how easy it is to go into these loops of comfort, which is why I try to show up online consistently, passionately, obsessively about continuing to pour into people on what's possible, because I know how easy it is to just stop and end up being submissive to old self. And I know that, bro. I go on a tangent, but I mean, it's just, I have to say everything so that everything can make sense.
And it makes sense. And it makes sense. And I think what you said too is something I learned called the law of facilitation.
Yes.
Where nerves that fire together wire together, but the more you perform a habit, the less energy it requires for your brain to do the habit, which, that's the autopilot thing. But when you want to break a habit, it it ties into what you're saying, how when we're awake, 5% is conscious, but 95% is subconscious. But when we want to change something, it's so hard because it requires more energy physiologically to literally not do what you consistently do. It's
Correct.
literally a new physical thing that requires so much energy. And on the mind part, if we can create that awareness and, have mentorship and people around that can give you enough strength to override and just fight through that small window of suffering or discomfort, so you can break that one more time, and then the next time, then it becomes easier and easier because it's literally becoming less energy to perform that new thing because
Correct.
you're wiring a new system,
Correct.
right? As you're getting rid of the old one. So
Right.
I think that's well put. And this is the Integrated Human Podcast, so we're all health. But back
Right.
to what you said about the organs and all that kind of stuff, I kind of wanted to correlate that so people understand is that when you're in the fight or flight state, blood flow leaves the organs and rushes the musculoskeletal system. So
Correct.
when he says everything is in your limbs, it's a real thing. All your blood is in your limbs, and you have less blood inside of your organs. But the
Correct.
organs is what drives the system. The organs is actually the most important system inside of your body, and your muscles are actually slave to your organs. Your organs actually tell your muscles what to do,
Literally.
right? Like, we know that each organ is tied to an emotion. That's one thing. However, there's also something called a visceral somatic reflex, which ties into all of this, is that whatever that emotion that you have, whatever that organ is, there's nerve innervations that are connected to the organ. For instance, I believe worry is the seat of the stomach and the intestines. Though the intestines and the lower back muscles, as well as the core muscles, are all innervated, they share the same nerve endings. So if you have worry, you're probably going to have back pain because the organ is more important. So if the organ is in pain, it has to shut down what it shares, which is pain signaling nerve endings with muscles.
Correct.
So I think that's another kind of like way of how the body is really holistically integrated and is
Yes.
affecting our entire health. And I would beg that the people, even me, actually, when I experience different emotions, I have literal physical pain in my body because it's connected, right?
Correct. For sure.
So, but yeah. So I want to
Anything
go ahead.
anything that, so I know that this was, uh, there was a lot of layers to this. Is there anything that you believe I can clarify a little bit deeper, a little bit more thorough, so that the audience could get even a better understanding? Because we're talking about the just the functionality of things, and I also want to be able to discuss at some point in this amazing podcast how to be able to construct a new reality leveraging this information.
Absolutely. Yes, that's actually what I want to get into next. I feel like you explained the mind, all of that. I think you explained that well. I don't think you can get any simpler or better than that.
Beautiful.
But that next piece, let's dive into that in terms of how can we construct, a plan, so we can rewire some things.
Beautiful. So the first, this right here, this is literally what I've dedicated my life to. This is what has provided me a purpose and has me feeling extremely fulfilled, and is teaching this, right? So when I'm gonna start working with anybody, I really prioritize constructing them, not reconstructing, because that's what a lot of people think they're doing. People think that they're reconstructing, and when you're reconstructing, that means that you have to go backwards before you go forward, right? And this is one of the big reasons why in life, and what I teach to my clients is that we play offense and we don't play defense. Because at the end of the day, when you're super, super focused on what you're creating and what you want, what you've lived and what you've done doesn't matter. But we're taught that we have to go deeper and we have to go backwards and we have to understand the root of things and all of that. You actually don't. Because what we do when we go backwards is, here's what happens, Elijah. When right now, let's say somebody has a severe trauma. In my case, I was molested from 2 to 6 years old. That's a severe trauma. So when I think about a lot of my behavior as an adult, a lot of my behavior was me coping with my emotions. But the reason why that became a choice was because in my subconscious, sexual behavior was already a norm. So what happens? When I became infatuated with constructing this human being, I wasn't necessarily focused on overcoming the trauma of being molested. I wasn't focused on overcoming the trauma of everything that I've experienced. I was focused on what type of human that I want to construct. So now, guess what happens? When I identified so I started backwards, but I want to start talking to you if I already knew what I knew now. Because
Right.
I started from the outside in. Now for me it's about the inside out, non-negotiable. So now I'm about to help somebody construct a new reality. The first thing that I ask them is, what emotion would you like to feel on a consistent basis? So a lot of people say, I want to be happy, I want to be at peace. All right, beautiful. So we replace the word happy with joy, because the only thing that can give you happiness is progress. Joy is permanent, right? Happiness is subjective. It's like, if you make progress, you can be happy, but happiness is momentarily. Joy is different. Joy is really tied to the nervous system. So, okay, if you want to be at peace and you want to feel joy, what does that actually mean? What does that mean to you? Because if you ask somebody, what does peace mean? The answers vary. For some people, they associate peace as not having to worry about bills, not having to stress. But what they don't realize is that they're still focusing on the problem. So for me, I teach my clients that all peace is being able to be fully present in the moment without having another thought or another emotion negotiating with you and taking you away from that moment. When you're fully present and you're able to immerse in whatever it is that you're doing, the only thing that can stop you from being at peace is the thoughts that you choose to entertain. And then those thoughts that you choose to entertain come with a certain perception. A thought, this is so deep. A thought is not good nor bad. A thought is just a thought. Your perception of that thought is going to make that thought either good or bad to your mind. Once that thought becomes good or bad to your mind, now you associate an emotion to that thought. The thought doesn't affect the feeling. The thought provokes the feeling, but then the feeling supports the thought. That's why when we think about things a million miles an hour, because once your perception is negative to a thought and you associate a negative emotion because of your perception to that thought, now the feeling affects the thinking. It's not the thinking that affects the feeling. So again, if we can just be fully present, immerse, and not allow ourselves to negotiate with anything, we're going to be able to maximize our experience.
Mm,
And then
right.
if you cope the peace with the joy, and you can really not just be in the moment, but enjoy the moment, now we're on another level. So I start with
Right.
the emotional. I start with the emotional home, and then from the emotional home, I ask them, "What would you like to construct?" Most people want more money, want more love, and want more health. For me personally, I like to focus on the internal wealth, and I like to focus on the external wealth. So now, this is what a lot of my clients realize. They come to me to want more money. They think that what they're coming to me for is to help them make more money. What I tell all of them and what ends up being is that what they want is more peace, and they think more money is going to allow that. So now, once we condition the emotional home and you have that peace and you have that joy without us necessarily working on the external, like I mentioned earlier, now you're no longer emotionally dependent on reality changing. And once you're no longer emotionally dependent on reality changing because you have that right channel frequency and that emotional home, now you're able to fully create and be in the next stage of enlightenment and authenticity. So people that chase money are willing to compromise their authenticity for $1, and then they
Right.
wonder why their bank accounts look good, but their fulfillment is not as great. So then, boom, we start with the emotional home. Then I help them identify what it is that they want, and if they want to have a good reality, they want to be able to experience more things, to continue to enjoy this peace and their joy. We get crystal clear on what that looks like. Once we're crystal clear on a target, most people when they think about targets, they think about like the long term. For me, it's like every short term target will inevitably lead to the long term. So then we construct the target, and once we construct the target, now is reprogramming their entire internal to maximize the opportunity to get to that target as fast as possible. So here's what I mean. People will come to me, they want more money, but subconsciously they see themselves as a broke person. So how can we possibly pursue more money if your identity is off? There's no way. How you see yourself on a subconscious level, we will never be able to outdo that person. So I help them, okay, you want to become successful. What does that identity look like? And we really own in on that identity. What are the thoughts around that identity? We already know the peace and the joy. What are the thoughts around the identity of a successful person? Let's really truly immerse in that, right? We have to literally embody the reality before we can have the physical reality. Because we create on 3 different planes. We got the physical, we got the mental, and we got the spiritual. So if we already know, no matter what's happening in the physical, we could already create with the spiritual and the mental. If you're in those right planes doing the right things, the physical becomes inevitable. But here's the problem. People are physically working hard, physically exhausting themselves, but they're not addressing the internal stuff that's compromising their frequency, that's compromising their reticular activating system, that's compromising their focus, that's compromising their awareness, and ultimately compromising their results.
I like that. I like that. I like that.
It's deep, bro. It's like
Right.
this right here is really super deep.
Right.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
God. No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I'm just as you're saying this, I'm just thinking about me, and I'm just trying to. So let me put me in a
Yep.
seat, and you're talking to me. For me, a lot of people tell me, and I'm gonna
Yep.
talk about myself for
Yes.
myself, but
Yes.
when outsiders is a good when you're around the right people, that's good information too. But
Mhm.
needless to say, a lot of people say about me, they be like, man, you know, you're so young, but you have all the pieces. You have all the pieces. Don't worry about it. Like you got everything. Trust me. Trust me. And these are successful people. That's all
Right,
I have around me are successful people.
for sure.
Um, older than me too.
Hmm.
Whatever. Um, but I'm living my life. I have my own emotions. I have my own thoughts, all these things. You can prophesy over me and all these things, lovely and all that, but we have to fight our own whatever we got. So if I put myself in the seat,
So real quick, before
go
you,
ahead.
real quick, 'cause this is very, like I'm already I'm already excited of where we're going. But one of the things that I do when I speak to anybody is I like to hold every word accountable.
Right.
So I associated the word fight before because of my inexperience, but now I want to replace the word fight with dance. Here's why.
Dance.
When we're dancing with the reality that we want, it's easy to redirect. When we're fighting, that means that we're exhausting efforts to combat. And when we're looking at our change as a fight, that means that we have a negative perception because a fight doesn't come with positive lens. And if we look at our efforts to change as a fight, that means that we're gonna have to entangle ourselves with something that we don't want. I'm not entangling myself with anything. I'm becoming aware, I'm confronting it, and I'm redirecting it.
Right. Mm, I like that. I like that. That's a perspective shift in of itself. Like
Exactly.
in of itself, like whatever it is, I could be like I'm dancing with it, and that immediately makes me feel better.
Exactly. Fight puts the amygdala aware.
Mm.
The blood instantly goes to the limbs. And the last thing we want to do is be on survival while we're constructing a new reality.
Right. Right. No, that's a fact. That's a fact. Wow, 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 wow. Okay, so okay. For me,
Mhm.
there's a couple things that I'm constantly aware of that I want to change, right?
Yep.
Number one is one thing I want to change is I'm confident. I believe in myself, but I feel like there's way more that I can embody within myself. So that um I would say also I'm an introverted person. I'm very introverted, although I've learned how to just communicate and things of that nature. Like how we're communicating now, I've learned to do this,
Right.
but I'm actually very shelled. But I that's not me. That is not me, right? So I feel like it all boils down to like you said, childhood. But anyways, all of these things that I want to change all boils down to one common thing, and that's being inside of a shell because of something. So I want you to walk me through that process of I'm consciously aware of things that need work. Um, now what is that next step? I know XYZ. What's my next actionable step?
So,
Oh, and sorry to interject.
you're
One
good.
more, I gotta add one more thing
Yes.
because now I gotta add vision into this. Vision.
Yes.
Because we if it's good to have vision.
Yep.
We should all have vision. Some people don't, but for me, I have vision.
Yep.
And for about 3 years, I've seen myself public speaking in front of masses, educating, being a role model, inspirational, all those things. But like you said, the internal reality, being a shell does not match speaking to 200 people in the crowd. That doesn't correlate. So that can't happen unless this part gets under construction, right? So I'll leave you with that. I just wanted to add that part into there.
Beautiful. So I love the transparency, and I'm gonna treat this like if we were to be in a session. You see what happened when you started to talk about yourself?
It's like,
You no, what this is what happened. You owned an identity, and then you tried to disown that same identity in the same sentence. So when you're having that conflict of I am this person, but then again I'm not this person, but then again I see myself as this person, all of that clashes. So when there's a inconsistency in conviction on who you are, that's gonna have you be disrupted internally because you're still trying to figure that out. I want to take this to another level for you personally because I had the privilege to meeting you. I think that you became an owner of this introverted identity because of how much you were misunderstood when you were expressing who your truth. So the introvert became a defense mechanism and a safety net. It's like I am this person, right? So that there's not an expectation when you become an extrovert, because whenever you would become an extrovert, that part of you would get misunderstood and sometimes judged. So then if I associate myself as an introvert and there's not an expectation on me to be an extrovert, when I become an extrovert because the expectation is so low, it becomes a lot more pleasant and a lot more comfortable. Now, if I say I'm an extrovert, that's going to come with a very high expectation. And now I'm not sure how much of me I can truly exercise without being judged when I try to do it before I came into my shell. So the shell became the defense mechanism. Deep down inside, you know that you're destined for greatness. Deep down inside, you know you're really meant to inspire people, to motivate people, to be on stages. You are aesthetically unbelievable, both externally and internally. Now you're seeing why when I help people construct a new reality, I start with the identity, because anything that we associate our self-image to has to be aligned with what we actually want for our life.
right.
So now, me being in your shoes, rather than having to associate whether I'm an introvert or whether I'm an extrovert, how about you're just you, right? And you show up as you, full force, without having none of these conflicts going on internally. That way, every decision that you make, you're making it as your best self already. So if we were to reverse engineer and you were to tell me, okay, bro, so here's where I'm at, Jeremy. This is what I see for myself. And if you tell me I see myself as the top health guru on the planet, what's stopping that identity from being our reality right now? Because all it is a decision. And then once you make, this is the key thing here, bro, and this is where a lot of people fall short. When you make a decision with uncertainty, what we're doing is we're making it easy for that inconsistency of introvert extrovert to come and visit us, create this narrative, put all these thoughts and emotions to bring us back to that because of the lack of conviction. But if we make an executive decision right now, this is who I am, and I'm no longer going to negotiate that. When anything tries to interfere with that, that's the dance. So then you take that new identity of I am the greatest holistic health guru on this planet, non-negotiable, and you cope that with the right belief system by constructing what that actually means to you. And the way you construct the right belief system is by finding somebody or two people or three people or five people or 10 people that are already pillars in your industry and embodying some of them, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can
Right.
extract something for people that are already doing what we want on a grand level, and that little by little will start to shape our belief system. Once we start to shape your belief system, now you really ask yourself, what do you value? What I know about you is that you value health wholeheartedly. And you do not like, in fact, you actually sometimes even suffer seeing what people are willing to do to themselves because of the lack of awareness and the lack of guidance to their physical health. So if you truly value people living optimally, right? And that's really
Yeah.
a priority that gives you this indescribable passion and just this indescribable feeling because you value that. Now your thoughts are going to be geared around, how can I put myself in a position where I can expose myself to more folks that can benefit from this passion. Now those thoughts cope with the emotions of peace and joy, knowing that you're operating your purpose on purpose. Now those emotions are going to lead you to behaviors. Once your purpose leads you to behaviors, you're going to behave in a way so consistently that those behaviors are going to lead to habits. And once you keep constructing those habits, you're going to inevitably see the results of all of that. So where you're at right now is that you have this energy, you have this passion. There's still some stories that you're listening to internally that come from the subconscious. I think that we're having this podcast to lead you to the decision of this is who you are, and you're no longer going to allow yourself to negotiate that. Because once you're operating in that space, you're not just going to show up, you're going to dominate.
Right.
Showing up is not enough. We're talking about straight up domination. So when I show up online and I have this passion and I have just this energy and I share my videos and I'm doing a video every single day and I'm doing content every day, that's because I am the greatest speaker on the planet and can nobody tell me otherwise. So my beliefs are that this is me, this is who I am, this is what I do. I value helping people. And because I value helping people, my thoughts are geared around how can I help people better, faster, more effective, right? And then my emotions are just in that peaceful, joyful state, knowing that I'm exercising my purpose, and then my habits are non-negotiable. So whether I feel like doing something or not, I either am or I'm not. And when you have an identity that's associated with conviction and you're no longer negotiating with yourself, that's when you know. And how do you know? When you're being your authentic self, when you're operating in a flow state, and you don't make no type of justifications of anything or like absolutely anything on why you can't show up for your purpose every single day. Showing up for your purpose is not an assignment, it's a privilege. And if something is a privilege, and if something is a blessing, and if something is an opportunity, why wouldn't we naturally flow into that?
Right.
When we don't flow into things, it's because there's internal turmoil happening in the subconscious mind that's compromising the conviction, and the lack of conviction is what's showing up in the inconsistent actions and results.
Right. Man, that was well said.
I know that was a lot, but I'm here to answer any questions.
Absolutely. Nah, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Does that make sense,
That
bro?
leads. No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Beautiful.
That makes sense. Look, leave the audience with something that's dear to you, that anyone listen to this, you want them to extract. If they didn't get anything else, get this.
I think the biggest thing when it comes to life is understanding what life you're going to feel the most proud of when you take your last breath? Reverse engineer from that. What we don't realize because of all of the things that are in our subconscious mind, we don't realize how much we tolerate. We don't realize how much we settle for. And we don't realize how much our experience on this earth is diluted because of our inability to understand what life will you be proud of when it's time to reflect on that last moment that you're departing the earth. And when you can really start to pay real attention to yourself as much as you do to other people's statuses and life, and you can really be in tune with you and become your own best friend and really just understand you on a great level, and you can really start to realize and identify what's the life that you're going to be obsessed waking up to, you do anything and everything it takes to construct that reality. You are worth it, right? When you think about the chances of us being a human being, when you think about us having the privilege to being on this beautiful thing called earth, experiencing this incredible thing called life, why wouldn't you want to live a life that you're obsessed waking up to? We already know that there's going to be certain aspects of our life that are going to be out of our control, that are going to be difficult to overcome. So because I know that I'm going to lose people that I love, because I know that there's going to be a moment where my kids are going to suffer over my departure, why wouldn't I make this one the only one that I need? Most people are focused on what happens after life because they're not willing to be accountable on what happens while they're alive. And I rather believe respectfully that there is no afterlife and this is the only chance that I get at life than to believe that there's an afterlife and depart this earth with gas in the tank because I chose to be more focused on what happens after I died than what happens when I was this version of me, Jeremy Rodriguez, while I'm on this earth representing this costume and representing God to the best of my ability.
Amen to that. Amen. Jeremy, it was an absolute pleasure. Like
Absolutely.
I really appreciate you joining and sharing all this information. This is extremely valuable. And I hope that everyone watching deems it the same. And definitely pop in towards Jeremy's social media pages. It'll be in the descriptions below and all that. And feel free to shoot Jeremy a message of anything you have and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure he'd be happy to help you in all those things. But Jeremy, would you like to give us any closing words before we go?
Yeah, so I wanna give anybody that listens to this, that's your audience, that's just curious on more, and they want to have an intimate conversation in a private setting where they can really, whether give me feedback on this podcast, ask me any questions to clarify, or if I can answer anything for them personally to get them on the track that they really would like to be on. I want to offer your guests, 5 guests, a 15-minute call with me, no expectations, free of charge, just to be able to take that 15 minutes and pick at my brain. To be clear, I'm not the person to know everything. I'm not the coach to act like I got everything all figured out. I'm not the person to claim that my life is perfect. But what I do know is I understand how to create and I understand how to be at peace and how to feel joy. And if anybody wants anything answered around this and they don't want to just go to ChatGPT or YouTube and they want to have a dialogue with a human being, 5 of your guests will get 15 minutes with me. All they have to do is send me a personal message, an email. Hey, I heard the podcast
Integrated
with
human.
Elijah with the integrated human. I want to have an opportunity to take full advantage of the 15 minutes. That's all they have to do. I'll handle the rest, and they'll be connecting with me personally, nobody else. They'll be able to ask me anything they want, and have that beautiful experience, and it'll be something that they will not regret for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. You guys heard it from the best. Go shoot that message, lock in, get your slot in. And Yeah, again, thank you for joining. This was another episode of the Integrated Human Podcast. I'm grateful that Jeremy joined. And again, this podcast is everything holistic. And, the mind plays a part into health, and what we can create physically and what we can create internally it should all be for the betterment of our health. So again, thanks, Jeremy, for joining. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. See you next time.
See you guys.